Welcome back. I'm Todd. This is Toxic Garage Customs, and right now about to have a look at the International. I've had a really good weekend, by the way. I've bought some parts. I've been out cruising with friends, spent pretty much the whole weekend. Then I went for a cruise with my wife in her car. The whole weekends have been about driving cars, socialising with my friends, socialising with my wife. I haven't seen much of my kids, so it's been a good weekend. But at the moment, I decided, since it's late on Sunday afternoon, hey, what better time than to start working on a car? You don't get it done if you don't do the work. So what we have is, I'm going to flip the camera around for you. I've got this steering column here. I've got to rebuild it. I've got a couple of them, and I'll make one good one out of two. It's out of a Holden HJ, X or Z, something like that. Not really sure. It's column shift auto. That's what I want for this thing. And I've got another one in there laying underneath that milk crate. And I've got a brake booster that matches it, and so on and so forth. So obviously there's nothing in here to steer this International with. So I'm going to have to fabricate mounts to hold the column up, and I've got to make it pop through that hole just there. So I'll have to brace the column once I put it in, so that it braces from the dash through to the firewall and so on. So there'll be an internal structure in there, because these old vehicles, this wouldn't have had a collapsible steering column, but for safety reasons the new stuff does. So they mount differently. You've got to have breakaway mounts, so that if you have an accident and the steering column comes towards your chest, then the mounts break away from the dash and the column itself telescopes within itself. The idea is to stop the steering column from going through your chest, or my chest, which quite frankly I think is a great change. So on the inside here, this is on a Holden chassis, so again I'm mating a column to the components that the car came out with. So this intermediate shaft just here, again it'll be rebuilt, it's just there to get it together. It goes down to the steering box, which is not really visible, but it's there below the power steering pump. And so the column needs to push through this hole, or a hole and hole, and go into here. So to go back to my column, this also has the intermediate shaft on it. This piece here is the intermediate shaft, so I'm going to remove it from the bottom of the column just there, so that I can push the column through the hole and line those up. I had a little bit of a trial fit before turning this video on, and what I already know is that that hole's not big enough. That hole just there. But if you notice, there's screws that hold that plate on. So I'm not going to go cutting anything to pieces in the first place, which is my usual mode of fixing things. Get an angle grinder, cut holes, fix later. But in this case, I'm going to try and undo those 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. There's one missing there, just to create an opening. And then I'll pop the column through and I'll see where it goes here. I have no doubt that when the time comes, I'll need to modify this opening here. And again, everything unscrews, it's pretty cool. So I'll either fabricate a new panel or just modify that one when the time comes. But inevitably, this hole will need to be bigger. And I should be able to get it so the column's in a pretty comfortable driving position. So let's take that panel off. Okay, so after about a quarter of a second trying to undo the screws with a screwdriver, I decided either they're too tight or I'm not strong enough. So I put some of this stuff on. Actually, to be honest, don't know where you buy this from, because a friend gave me about 3 or 4 cans of it. It's great. It's such a good penetrating lubricant. I've never come across anything that works quite as well as it. So I sprayed a little bit on the front here, but I sprayed a more liberal amount on the back, just on the thread. Where are we? On the threads there, just where these various bolts stick through here. Look, if I can't get them out easily, I'm actually going to just cut the heads off with the grinder and worry about it later. I can re-tap a thread. I may just end up welding a panel in there. I'll worry about that later. So I'll give that a go in a moment. Okay, so another quarter of a second later, I've decided that I've had enough of trying to get these screws out. since I'm not going to reuse them anyway, because I really don't like flat bladed screws. I find them hard to get undone and they just strip out. So I'm just going to cut them off with an angle grinder and be done with it, worry about it later. So what you'll see here, I've ground the head off this one, done part of that one, trying not to destroy everything in the process, and I've done part of this one. Been on it for about 2 minutes, I reckon. I'm just not interested in wasting the time. Now, using this cordless angle grinder, what is it? Milwaukee. It's a good thing. I like Milwaukee tools. I like Makita tools as well. So yeah, this Milwaukee cordless angle grinder, I like it. I really don't like the guards on them. So if you're from Milwaukee and you happen to be watching this, can you change your guards? A lot of people take them off. I leave them on. They're cumbersome, they get in the way, but I really don't want a blade exploding and going through parts of my body that I prefer to keep. So yeah, there's that. So I don't think I'm going to film this. It's probably not very exciting, but I'm going to continue to grind those off. Okay, about another minute later, hopefully this thing's ready to take off. Beautiful. The plate's still intact. As I said, I don't know if I'll use it or not, but it's intact. The bolt heads are still there. I can drill, tap, screw those later. All the dirt caught behind there. But I now have a large opening to be able to fit a steering column through, and you can see where it's meant to connect into. Let's try and get this intermediate shaft off. It didn't have the bolt in it, so it should just slip off. A little bit of rust holding it together. So it's sliding off the bottom shaft of the column there. There we go. So you can see this little lug just here to when you put the bolt in. There, it stops the intermediate shaft from spinning around on the column, and then there's the splines as well. Sorry, it doesn't stop it from spinning around, it stops it from dropping down. So yeah, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit so that it slips into the other intermediate shaft that's in the car a little easier, and then we'll try and pop it through. This plate here, it typically mounts to the floor of the car, so it gives a seal, dust and water seal, and allows the column to come in and out so that it can slip through the floor, so you unbolt it, much like the panel I just took off in the International. So I'll try and utilise that in the new installation, so therefore that panel that we took out will either become redundant or I'll patch it up, cut a new hole in it so that the original Holden panel can be adapted on there. So I'll clean this up and we'll see how it goes. Okay, just spent 20 seconds on the wire wheel on the bench grinder. Just giving it a quick clean, just so the threads are clean enough to accept into the intermediate shaft okay. I haven't checked out the intermediate shaft yet. Yeah, it looks okay. Might just spray a bit of looby dooby in there, and so we can slide it through. See how she goes, eh? Okay, so I've just got the shaft sitting in there. You can see that the protrusion in the steering column to the intermediate shaft, it's about the right distance. No way is it positioned where it's supposed to be yet, but just the distance. So I can see where the column will sit in relation to the dash. Looks like it sticks out a fair way, but we'll see. As predicted, this is not going to fit up into there, so I'll attempt to undo these screws for 4 seconds, and when that doesn't work I'll cut them off and we'll lift the column up into a more suitable position, and that way the alignment, the line of the steering column going into the intermediate shaft will be a more direct angle as well, because it changes direction a fair bit through there at the moment. So once the column's lifted up, hopefully it'll line up and it'll look good. Managed to get 2 of them undone, 2 on this side, not the 2 on that side. So I'm just going to put a bit of heat onto the other 2, and just see if I can get them undone. And again, if it mucks me around for too long, then I'll just probably drill them or die grind them out or something. So we'll see what happens. don't really want to destroy the gauges in this. I don't know if I'll use them or not, but someone might be able to. And yeah, why destroy them if I don't have to? So the reason I say that is I'm trying not to put too much heat towards the gauge. So I put some lubricant on this before, and it's smelling, stinks in here really bad. I'm just trying to put some heat because the heat helps to just break the rusty seal. The metal, some of it expands at greater rates than others, and it just sort of helps to break it open. You can see smoke coming up there. What's on fire? Nothing. I'll do this. Also find that if I just give it a bang with a hammer, it sort of just loosens up that rusted thread a little bit as well. The other two were tight, but I got them undone with my sheer brute strength, which is not an incredible amount, so they can't have been too bad. Remind me to show you how much this dash wobbles. Don't forget, remind me to show you how much this dash wobbles when I grab it, which tells you that if you're trying to mount a steering column to it, then it wouldn't be very safe or sturdy. So that's why I'm going to need to put the bracing, and the bracing will come from the firewall, from the back of the booster towards the steering column, to distribute the weight, the load, the whole lot from firewall back to dash, and it'll sturdy the whole lot up. Makes a big difference. I don't know why I'm moving from one screw to the other. I probably should be concentrating on one at a time, but I'm holding a camera in my left hand, filming with my right, and getting distracted, I guess. Let's see if this one comes undone. I've got to put something down. I'll put you down. Okay, it's still hot, and I gave it a couple of quick bangs with a hammer, and I did just grab this and give it the simplest of little turns. It came undone. So it's hard to do like this. That's moving. Let's see this one. I haven't done the top one yet. Where are you? Trying to do this while holding the phone is rather no, not yet. I'll come back. A bit more heat, a couple of hits, and I have loosened this already just a second ago. And out she comes. Left-handed, I'm right-handed, driving a screwdriver, holding a phone. This will be hot, so I'm not going to grab it. Now we've got a larger opening to put a steering column through. With just a little bit of preparation of those splines, this went together really easily. First half went in easily enough, second half just had to give it a shove. Always be careful with collapsible columns. Don't go hitting them on the end, the steering wheel end, because you will potentially collapse the steering column shafts inside. They'll telescope. There's little plastic or nylon pins inside. They shear off, and that allows one shaft to move inside the other, and that's if you give it a bit of a whack on the steering wheel end. So you don't want to do that, because that will ruin your column. And it's also worth knowing that when you're getting a second-hand column, you want to be aware of that as well. Okay, so we've got the column up in here. Again, this will be completely rebuilt. Now, that's where it sits. Now, I'll pause for a second. Not really the easiest thing to show you, but the column is coming through. I can eyeball it, and it looks like it's in pretty much a dead straight line from here. I haven't looked from the engine bay side yet. I can play around with the height once I know. Like, I might pop the seat in. I've got a seat for this. I won't do it now, but I'll pop a seat in, and then I can work out just how high I want it to go up and down. You don't want too much angle on any of the joints, but it does allow for a bit. So it's not dead straight, I was wrong. This shift leakage could be an issue with the engine as well, with the rocker cover. I'm not sure where I've got the column orientated at the moment. So it's meant to sit like that. Yeah, so I can't really tell just at the moment, but I guess it shouldn't be too much of a problem, because again, it's a Holden motor in a Holden chassis with a Holden steering column, so I'm not really sure how close these are to each other if this was in a Holden, like Holden body. So it may be that I just need to move it across a little bit over here. I'm not sure, I'll actually have to have a look. So that'll be a little bit of research for me. If I can make it work, I can make it work. But if I can keep the geometry of the angle of where the intermediate shaft meets the steering column as close to the way Holden designed it, then it'll just be like a Holden. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. I said it earlier, but it's going to be column shift auto. So I've got the linkages. I'm doing that because I'm trying to keep this build simple. Then I don't have to worry about putting a floor shifter in it. This is the column shift over here. Indicators, obviously. I'll have to get a new barrel and key for it. I won't be using that steering wheel, as beautiful as it is. It sort of goes, I guess, with the age of the truck. Yeah, so it's looking good. I think once there's a seat in there, it's a bit hard to tell with all the rubbish that's there, but I think the steering position will be pretty good. My Chev has about the same, so the bottom of the honey pot there, this part here, is flush with the dash. There's actually part of the column inside the dash there, so it's would normally be mounted further out than what it is there. I think it'll be okay. No clearance issues with the shifter on the dash. I like it. I think it'll be okay. Well, I think for the moment we'll call that a video. Obviously not the end of this process, but we'll call that the end of this video. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. There will be more follow-up on this. This is part 1 of steering column installation on International L110 truck. I'm new to YouTube, so all that stuff, like, share, comment, subscribe, apparently it's good. So if you can do that, it'll be good for me. Appreciate it. Thank you.